What is going on, everybody? It is Brave Cat here once again with another earthquake update and volcanism. So let's take a look at the last. Hold on, I gotta check. Okay. I'm gonna look at the last 7 days here of earthquakes. There's been a decent amount of stuff here. I've got a little bit of Runescape music in the background, so don't mind that. There's been a lot of developments happening. Definitely, as you can see here, it's quite a busy time. So, all right, let's turn this down a little bit and look at the most recent activity. So we've had new developments over here by Fiji going into the Indo-Australian plate here. We've got some deeper earthquakes here. If we look this one up here, another 560 kilometer depth. That's pretty deep. And there's like two of them there with some larger, shallower quakes as well popping up. We got a 5, a couple 5s, really just 3 5s basically. Just kind of sprouted up there with those deep earthquakes. We take this back a little bit here. Again, we can see the activity going all the way around the plate and going up into the West Pacific, Japan, and then that, these plates kind of branch off into Asia and the Middle East. Luckily, it looks like the Afghanistan region has finally stopped getting aftershocks. So that's good. I mean, depending on what feed you're looking at, I haven't looked through all of these. There's really just a main kind of few that I'll run through. But it doesn't look like there is any for, like, specifically for Asia. You got Russia, you got the Smithsonian volcanoes, Europe, Australia, Germany, New Zealand, Canada, Italy, Turkey, Philippines, Greece, Mexico. Yeah, it doesn't look like there actually is really any agencies we can look at for Asia, India, like really any of these areas here, even Africa. So we're just kind of relying on whatever we can see. We've had continued activity. Just, 3s. I feel like it's kind of creeping up, though. We got like a 3.8 going into possible 4 range activity over here. So we got some developments there. Now, the West Coast, this is kind of the, well, I guess the star of the show here. So we've had some larger activity show up here off the coast of Oregon. It looks like it started with this 5.8. Very close to a 6 range earthquake, and followed by a whole bunch of subsequent 5s and 4s, upper range 4s. So definitely eyes open on that. We're going to be kind of judging by the swarm activity, especially in Southern California. It looks like we've got quite a swarm of mid-sized tremors, 3s and 2s. So there's a lot of pressure happening in the plate, as well as movement happening. And there's always movement happening in pretty much all of these plates, especially the West Coast, because it's a subduction zone. This is always moving. This is always doing something. And I'd say this is just, a bit above average on the level of activity. There's always something going on over here, whether it be tremor swarms, mid to slightly larger sized quakes. But if we take a look at what's happening inside the U.S., there's also been some activity popping up there. So we have this 4.1 here. I'm going to look that up really quick here. And Mazer, Utah. So let's just take a look at these coordinates here. I've been enjoying just kind of studying like geography and stuff using these earthquakes. It's just, I don't know, for some reason I find it to be like a cathartic experience almost, you know, you're just kind of exploring things in the digital format. So this is where this quake has struck, and says it's 68-kilometer depth. Usually you don't see earthquakes that are that deep over here. You know, as opposed to over here, like say by Fiji, for example, where a lot of these volcanoes and very deep volcanic chambers are found. That's where we can expect a lot of deep earthquakes. These are pretty much always these are going off, but we've just been seeing a slight uptick recently. So anyways, we got a slightly deep earthquake here. Looks like it's right here at Little Mountain. And see, you can kind of, you know, use your imagination a bit, as well as, you know, studying up on some geology to kind of, you know, when you look at these areas, you can kind of start to see some features that may help explain why some of these earthquakes tend to pop up in these locations, or if we see an area that gets hit that rarely ever gets hit. So I'm just kind of looking at this mountain range here. I don't know if this is related to anything volcanically, but, you know, if we're talking about the grand scheme of things, thousands to millions of years ago, you know, there's been volcanoes everywhere at some point. So including a mountain like this. So I'm looking at the terrain here, and it looks like, to me, this looks like some sort of burn scar, maybe, that happened here. Yeah, it doesn't really look like this is the color of the actual rock itself. This definitely looks like some sort of burn scar. But I'm just kind of looking around to see, you know, okay, is there any sort of perforation point in the crust, or some sort of tectonic boundary that would justify having an earthquake show up here. And they could be anywhere, you know, I'm not saying there has to be a specific reason, but, you know, this is a mountain range, so, you know, it could be caves and other fissures going on underneath that we don't see. There's a lot of interesting, like, erosion and kind of long-term formations here. When I looked at this earlier, I almost thought maybe this was like a ancient volcanic butte or something based on the color of the terrain, but upon closer inspection, I think it's way more likely this is actually just a burn scar from a wildfire or something, especially because we see, you know, the inconsistencies in the satellite imagery. So, I mean, you can literally kind of see, like, I'm sure this must be a different date of satellite imagery than this area. So that's pretty obvious to see there. But for example, let me just take you over to a couple of these other examples that I have for volcanic buttes that are very old and are made up of, you know, those darker rock types like basalt and other volcanic material from like old lava flows and stuff. So I've been trying to look around for stuff like this as well. You know, these are not burn scars. These are actually just really old lava flows that once existed and have, you know, turned out to be these different formations. This one is close to Monte Cristo, this whole range here. And then we have another one that I found that's just over here. This one's actually a little bit more spectacular here. Really old. I mean, these, I have no clue when these might have been active, but we'd also look at these for potential locations that can have earthquake seismic pressure releases. So that's why I look at Google Maps with some of these earthquakes, because, you know, you'll be surprised at what you find. So let's see, let's take a look. Let's just take a quick look here before I'll move on to the rest of the stuff here. But let's take a look at this one here down in Texas. Haven't looked at this one yet. But let's take a look. Just get rid of these. Oops. think I interrupted it. What just happened? Okay, it didn't take us there, but here it is. Down in Texas. So interesting. So yeah, we're not really going to probably see too much around here because, well, Texas is a very large and kind of, at times sparse open areas where there just doesn't seem to be many features to look at. But if we look at the zoom out version here, so if we just kind of take a look at the US overall here, okay, this might be a bad example on this specific satellite imagery, but there's a craton edge in the US. It's known as the North American Craton, and it basically is like its own kind of fault boundary that goes down through the Rocky Mountains, goes down through Texas, across, and then goes back up into the New Madrid zone, up into the Appalachian Mountains and the other parts of the East Coast. And even like if you look at, sometimes it can be easier to even just flip the map upside down so that you don't, you're not recognizing the normal geography, but you get a different perspective on it. So, we go down up from the northwest in Alaska, and you can see these mountain ranges and these plates that twist and turn and go down through the Rockies, and then it kind of splits off through Mexico. But in terms of the North American side, this goes right across Texas and up into these other boundary areas, crawling up through the East Coast. So we look through these areas for earthquakes as well, because it has its own plate boundaries and whatnot. It's kind of hard to see with the Google Earth here, but I might stick up a reference image. So anyways, though, we have a Texas quake here. Not really going to look too much into that right now. There's still more to cover. So let's bring back all the earthquakes here just in the past, half the week, maybe, past 3 or 4 days or so. Still lots of activity going on up here off the Russian peninsula. And it looks like activity here in the northwest in Alaska has kind of slowed down a little bit as we see newer activity, more activity popping up on the west coast. Then we kind of covered this. Let's take a quick look at the Australian feed to get more precise data on this area. So here we can actually get a good picture of what's going on specifically here. So in the last 7 days here, we've had these fives pop up along the plate on the outer edges, and some newer ones pop up as well. So we've had these deep earthquakes over here. We've had the 6.4 that struck, and then now we have a newer 5, kind of just right in between these two. And then this other newer 5 that kind of popped up right where all these plates intersect and crash together. And in terms of Australia, we've had nothing too major. I mean, I'm sure like even this 3.3 and some of these other 3s probably were not really felt at all. We can take a look at the Australian feed. I don't know if they actually say, okay, there's a felt report button here, but it doesn't really say, it doesn't have any data on that, it looks like. At least I can't find it right now. But we do get a map as well, so we don't even have to look these up. But I won't really spend too much time here unless I do some other digging and find something interesting. I'm not trying to waste too much time, but that's what we got there. Luckily there isn't anything too crazy going on here, but with all this other larger activity, we could maybe expect to see more. But anyways, let's switch to a different feed here. Let's take a look at Europe, since that one is also definitely has some activity there. So yeah, as we can see, well, it's actually hard to see. You probably can't see because of all the all the bullcrap in the way. But if we turn those rings off, we can kind of see a little bit better here. So it looks like, it is following this plate boundary pretty well, and it just kind of is like reverberating into the European plate as we see earthquakes popping off, going in here. This is Western Turkey. We have Greece, Athens, Greece over here, and some of those other countries, Italy. There's some new activity up here in Poland, it looks like. Let's turn those rings back on. So we had, these are fairly recent, 4, 3, and a 3.8 over here in Poland. So stuff is kind of just popping off on a mid-sized scale globally, with different swarms happening in certain areas. There's a swarm here happening in West Turkey, and it's been happening for, I've noticed it for the last couple weeks especially. And there's some slightly bigger ones kind of littered in here, but it's mostly 2s and 3s. And I've been just curious about what is actually going on. So we can actually go to the Turkey feed. Now this says last 150. I'm assuming that means last 150 days of 1.0 plus activity. And so I'm assuming what that means is this date scroller is now the last 150 days. Just making some assumptions here, but that would kind of make sense if we drag it out all the way. The same exact swarm that's down here in Western Turkey, it just stretches up into the heavens. I mean, my program can barely even render. Sorry, not my program. This is Richard Bolton's program. Link in the description, all credit where it's due. But as we can see here, this just stretches into infinity. So I've been kind of trying to do some research on this. Well, mostly just through Google Earth. I haven't actually looked it up. I haven't actually done formal research on this, but I guess I'm just trying to do some detective work myself. So honestly, let's just go back to the USGS feed, because I don't like the way any of these other agencies have their website set up. So if we go here, then we'll at least get a couple to pop up on the USGS feed. These are some of the bigger ones. So same area, 4.9, 4.4, along with the huge stack of smaller ones. So if we go here, we can get the easy access to the coordinates. We can just punch right in here. Makes it all so much easier. So let's go over here to Western Turkey, where we see interesting size of swarm. We're just kind of looking around here. There's a lot of quarries around here, so I'm kind of wondering, maybe it's like some sort of quarry activity, blast mining or something, creating some of these tremors, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I'm just looking around here. We have some sort of large scale potential mining operation here, and then we have another one here. There's over here, this is the one I first discovered, and it actually is like labeled. Well, it was labeled. It's kind of finicky trying to get labels and stuff to pop up, but this is obviously a quarry. It's a mine. I'm not sure what they're mining for, but just looking around here, seeing what could potentially be going on here. There's another kind of similar looking thing here. So I don't know if there's a bunch of mining going on. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it would maybe potentially explain why there's just a huge swarm of small tremors and stuff. I don't know. I'm already getting kind of winded just looking around at stuff. So So let's go back over here to South America, because this is another area where we've seen a lot of stuff, and it kind of stretches down these plate boundaries into the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So there's been some newer fives pop up here. Emphasis on fives, where it's like they're just everywhere. They're over here in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, south as far as almost Antarctica. You know, they're over here spreading all the way across the Indo-Australian plate. They've been going into regions of Asia and the Middle East, and even potentially into Europe, as well as the West Coast, and just, I mean, everywhere. So, yeah, there's fives everywhere. Anyway, so let's take a look at what's going on here. These are all kind of similar sized depths. A lot of similar sized earthquakes as well. Again, mid-range 4 to low-range 5 activity. Hopefully this music's not too distracting. It's the only music I can find right now that I could potentially be allowed to use in videos and stuff. And, you know, Runescape is it's like an old friend, so... Alright, so we have, you know, like Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru. That's kind of the area that we're looking at here. And let me actually just pull up the volcanic stuff really quick, because it's all related, you know, in some way. So, now I don't know how accurate this image is here, because some of these spots don't actually seem to pop up down here, unless I just haven't seen it. So it's like, okay... Is there Bolivia, Peru, Chile? Like, no, there's not, like, any of those locations show up here for a potential volcano. So, but right here, we do see at the very bend of that plate, right kind of where Peru, Bolivia, and Chile, just kind of all those areas intersect, is where there's, like, potentially... a volcano. Like, I think this one right here, if I can just try to pull that one up here, this 4.4, like, this looks like it's right where that spot is, right? Maybe just a little bit west of that. But anyways, let's go in here. So yeah, some of these are, you know, a lot of these are about 1 to 200 kilometers depth in this area, but it is a large mountain range with a lot of you know, volcanic areas. So anyway, let's take a look over here. I love the mountain ranges that are over here. Even just looking at them on Google Earth is like spectacular. I mean, they're just so colorful and majestic looking. Like, yeah, literally right here, like, look at these mountains, right? So we got all these colors and all these variations here. If we go a little bit down here, so yeah, these are some potential volcanoes. I don't think a lot of these have erupted in a long time, hence why I guess none of them show up on here, on the Smithsonian at least. But here, I mean, this is a classic stratovolcano right here. I mean, you can just look at it and you can easily tell that is a volcano. Same with this, pretty similar, just maybe a little bit more covered in snow. And these kind of just range all along here, so I think that's why we are consistently seeing slightly deep activity, is just because there's so many potential fissures and magma chambers and things for the seismic pressure to be released within. The path of least resistance. It's like, you know, you can think of it almost like where lightning strikes. You know, it tries to take the path of least resistance. That kind of seems like how, you know, earthquakes kind of function. So, okay, sorry, I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed here. Let's just go here and just take a little look at some of the land formations and stuff, because it's really fascinating to me. I mean, just going in here and looking at all this stuff, like just look at this, like, it's freaking beautiful. So anyways, though, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at on the South American plate here, is we have this very diverse mountain range, dotted by some things like this. Like, look at that water. It's so blue. So anyways, that's kind of what we got going down there. So we'll kind of go into the volcanoes a little bit more here. So this is the Smithsonian here. There's other places you can look at for volcanic activity. This one just feels a little bit more convenient, a little bit easier to access, because even in terms of this program, right here we have active volcanoes, Smithsonian Institution Weekly Report. So it's in this program too. We can even look at most of these volcanoes that we see on here are directly in here as well. So it makes it really nice and easy to correlate the data sets and explore these things efficiently. So we got, Hawaii, that's obviously been a thing. And if we go in here, we have eruption start date, last known activity, and some of these have brief descriptions. So you get a lot of easy information that's all consolidated right here. And if the ones at the bottom are ones that have been going on for a long time. So some of these for decades, some of these have been going on for centuries. So yeah, these things are always happening. But it seems like, we've had a lot of stuff cropping up this year and in the past few years. So it seems like a pretty important and relevant set of data to look at, even as it pertains to earthquakes. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all these, but it is interesting. You can kind of see how this relates here. So, if we take a look at this right here, just kind of look at that and be like, okay, these are a lot of the main volcanoes that have had some sort of activity, and then we're going to go back to the earthquake feed and then you just see how that correlates, especially up here off the Russian peninsula, where there's like literally 3 of them right next to each other, 3 volcanoes. And then even south of Japan here, these right here. And, the spot over by Fiji, now, okay, Fiji's not active. I don't think it, nobody thinks it will be active. It's filled with water. But there is other volcanoes that do have potential eruptive activity around Fiji. And like I said earlier, with all these volcanoes and deep underground chambers, tends to be why we continually see deep earthquakes happening here closer to the mantle, because it's like you have a path that just goes right down through the plate boundaries, through the magma chambers. So these are always happening, these deep earthquakes. Even some of these other spots around here frequently have them happen. All right. Well, that was a absolute blast of information, I'm sure. But that's, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm probably going to leave this off here and wrap it up by taking a look at the tremor map for the West Coast, stretching up into Canada. Not really so much as the southern side, but we actually do get some good information on the Southern California here in this program. If we go to the 0.0 and greater feed, let's just take a look at the last day. Wow, that's actually even more than I was expecting. So yeah, we even see some stuff going on, Texas, Louisiana kind of area. But so on this, we get a lot of the information on the southern side. And this is the last day. Not sure how many that is. If I had to guess, I'd say, it looks like it's close to, 50 to 100, perhaps. But let's go back to the tremor map here. And so this is yesterday. This is yesterday's feed. Not sure if it'll have anything for today yet because the data is not complete. But if you look at yesterday, 407. Most of them over here close to Eureka. Pretty large cluster there, and we can even turn on color by time. So since this is just from today, we got blue being the oldest and red being at the end of the day. We got some blue, lighter blue. But if we take a look at the last, let's take a look at the last week and a half, sorted by time, then we can get a bit more of an interesting picture here. So we got the newer cluster here that seems to be north of this older cluster. And, I don't know, like, exactly what all this means in terms of, like, maybe, I can only speculate. So it's like, it kind of feels like this kind of, we're kind of looking at the movement of the plate in a way, and, potentially, like, how much seismic pressure is coming in here and trying to move the plate. And this isn't even really too out of the ordinary. I've been looking at this tremor map for years, and it varies. So I mean, if we, there's like this time graph up here, so we've had a bit of an influx of activity, and then, but if we, I guess, take it to last month, let's take like a bigger look at the data here. There's going to be a ton, so we got like almost 10,000. I haven't actually looked at this large. Wow, okay, look at that, dude. See, it's just, this stuff is just fascinating to me. Like, I don't even really know what I'm fully looking at here, but it just looks cool. And we can see, like, the different colors, the different clusters that come and go. Yeah, I mean, look at that. That's like, it's just like a perfect gradient of yellow, orange, red, dark red. It's really cool to look at. So it'd be interesting to see, more actual research and potential ideas as to how these tremors fluctuate. But as you can see on the time graph here, there's a lot of low spots and high spots. It's never consistent. And we seem to be on an upward trend right now. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that and probably wrap things off here. So there's my there's my earthquake and volcano update for now. There's going to be other content and other ideas I'm trying to look into, so as well as the music, of course, and quitting vaping. I'm not going to be posting daily quitting vaping updates. That's I don't really care to do that. But I will be developing hopefully some kind of course or special set of resources that could potentially help others if you're struggling on quitting vaping or smoking. There's a lot of mental, physical preparations you can do, as well as a lot of different tools and DIY things you can come up with to help that journey. But anyways, that'll be it for now. Hope you all having a good one, and I'll catch you all next time.